So the first thing we want to talk about is the syllabus. Again, this is a weird blended class. This one, it actually makes some sense. So this is going to be the class where you have, in some cases, the least assignments, but the most intensive assignments, and you're going to be working on them, and you have to develop a lot of those pieces. So it's a little different than some of our other classes. So let's go through some of our syllabus really quickly, and you'll find that online. I did not print a copy because I am saving trees. It is my new goal, less tree killing. So obviously, if you're on campus, you found this. If you're off campus and you want to come in at this time, so we do meet at 2 o'clock Monday, Wednesdays. There will be some occasions just due to some individual things where we start working individually, where we may not have class at this time. We may do some rescheduling where we do individual blocks and different assignments. So Blackboard's going to be your friend to keep track of that. Also in here, you keep track of that. We will try to record a lot of the things in class so that they're available both for you guys and for the online component students. So my office hours, we all know that contractually we are only obligated to have 5 office hours a week. Those are my contractually obligated office hours. I will send out a notice of when I am normally here also. So in fact, today you'll notice I didn't have any office hours. The problem is if I list more office hours, then I have to, if I'm not able to be there, then we have to take them out of our salary, leave, paid, whatever thing. It's a crazy, weird contractual thing. So there are obviously a lot more hours. If you need something, I will usually respond really as quickly as I can, and we can find some times to do most of that. So if you come onto campus and you're looking for me and you don't find me in my office at TJ Majors, look in here. You might look upstairs, wander around, text me, and I will probably respond. So the top office phone number, if you've ever called me on that one, I feel sorry for you because it goes nowhere. In fact, at this point, it routes back to the secretary, doesn't go anywhere. If you must leave a voicemail for me, leave it at that Google Voice number, that 1320. In addition to voicemail, you can actually text that number if you really wanted to. So that's a much better way to get a hold of me. Probably the best way is actually my email. It also goes to my phone. We will also use Skype and other virtual technologies in here. So my Skype handle, if you want to go ahead and add it, is Bradley P. Griffin. So salient to all of the classes, our weeks end at Monday or on Sunday at 10 p.m. So if we have homework or an assignment or a project or something else, that ends at 10 p.m. Sunday nights. That way I can hopefully look at them, sometimes even get some of them graded before we come in on Monday. That's kind of the plan and how we're hopefully going to do that. So you do need a book for this class. It is available in Cengage Unlimited. If you want a hard copy and you've purchased Cengage Unlimited, you can actually, I believe, is it $7.99? Did you guys rent that? Did you buy a physical copy of this book?
Of course I did.
Okay. Depending on how much you spent for it, it may be cheaper. Because this is an old, used book. There's nothing magical and brand new in here. There's several editions newer. And you can probably get this book or rent this book fairly cheaply. It is available, like I said, in that Cengage Unlimited in an electronic form. So however you got it. Did you spend a lot of money, Rachel?
No, I don't remember, but I already have Cengage Unlimited.
Oh.
I don't remember the marketplace.
So if you bought it and you already have Cengage Unlimited, you can probably, for the cost of shipping, send it back. But with Cengage Unlimited, and I don't know if anybody has tried this or not, once you have Cengage Unlimited, you can then rent a physical copy if you like physical copies of books. And I believe it's I'm getting the glare again. I believe it's $7.99 a book is what I was informed. Now, we are having an interesting thing, so some of you might be in my programming course also. That book that we were going to use last minute got pulled out of Cengage Unlimited to make life more miserable. So we'll see how this goes. This one is in there. It's in there still. We really just used it as a framework. Worst came to worst, we would change and find an alternative textbook. So it's not a horrible thing. So systems analysis and design. You could probably, even if you got the 6th edition, probably be fine. I don't have them next to each other to compare them side by side, but my guess is they're very, very similar. You do not. This one we do not use any codes. However, if you have there is the MindTap, but the MindTap for this one doesn't really have anything other than some flashcards or something. So wherever you can find a copy of this book. So next up on our list, what do you need for this class? Well, depending on your project, you may have some different needs. So in this particular case, you will at least need a word processor. And I don't care what processor you use as long as you can save it as a .docx or .doc file. I don't care. You will probably need some form of a spreadsheet software. Depending on your project, you may find that you need other tools. And some of those may be available on Microsoft. Was Imagine, now it's going to have a new name. We got Once Again this year, but we have an option for you to download. So Visio you could get, Microsoft Project. There may be other tools and things you need, and I will try to point you to low-cost options when we can. But those are really kind of differing depending on your project and how you approach that project. If you end up doing some kind of a coding project, for example, you might well need something different than that standard. So the other thing you will need, if you're not local to campus, although it may be salient and helpful here also, is you'll need a webcam and a Skype subscription. Skype subscription to go Skype to Skype is how many dollars? $0. Skype is free. It's a great, wonderful thing about it. Blackboard also has a service I have tried and not had really great luck with, especially in the lab, called Collaborate, that we can also do some video conferencing with. But in here, because we're all on a shared pipeline in the lab, does not seem to be the greatest and most reliable. I've had much better luck with Skype. So you don't need anything fancy, but at the end of the class, we actually do an interview at the end of the class that we require you to do. And so that's one of the things. And a lot of times it's easier, and especially when we all have different topics, to do a quick video chat than it is to sit there and send emails back and forth. And we're kind of circling around the drain in some of those. So prerequisites, well, you need to be a major. You need to be a senior business major. You've got to have all this other blah, blah, blah. If you really wanted to try to take this class as a freshman, you are more than welcome to. So if you are in here, you are certainly welcome to. So what are we going to do? So we have terminology, more terminology, because we're going to add more things. We're going to look at tools and models and ways we can look at information as a system. Not just information as little discrete pieces, but how does it work? How does it flow? How does it model? So you're going to be able to work with things like cost-benefit analysis. You're going to have to interact with a stakeholder during a system project. Because part of this class, being a senior project course, is you are going to have to go out and you're going to find a company, find an organization, find a nonprofit, and you're going to actually have to work with them to develop some technology overhaul, some planning, and some different things. So don't get panicked yet. So this course is going to take you substantial time and effort. What you get out of this course is exactly what you get into it. So if you decide you are only going to work 5 hours a week on this class, you're going to get that 5 hours a week of effort. You're probably going to get the 5 hours a week grade also, quite frankly. When I sketch this one out, this class, I come out to at least 135 to 140 hours. So it fits the minimum, and depending on the project, you may be putting in a lot more. And you've probably discovered upper division courses take a lot more effort and time. Not a big surprise there. So the final project is due the Friday of Dead Week. So your project will be turned in the Friday of Dead Week. During Dead Week, or during Finals Week, you actually will have that interview then over your process and your project. So rather than a traditional, all-encompassing, horrible final to take, you guys have to do about a half an hour interview. Probably not as bad. Unless you're the student who tried to cheat their way through and have somebody else do their entire project for them, and their interview did not go very well. Just throwing that out there. So Class attendance, well, I do need you to participate, but I'm not going to give you points for just being here. That seems there. There are quizzes, and there's project completion, and there's all kinds of things in there built into Blackboard, and we have about 830 points for this class. Following that scale, 90, 80, 70, 60. Grade appeal policy. There is a grade appeal policy on our campus. If you do not get the grade that you feel that you deserve, you have a rights and you have an ability to appeal that grade. First appeal goes through the dean, and then it can actually go to faculty senate. However, the conditions of that appeal really are that I treated you differently than other students in the class. Not, hey, I thought I should have got an A because I really tried really hard. Well, that's not really a reason. But if you got a different test from me on every exam, and we've actually had this discussion about we find somebody cheating in a quiz at the beginning of the year, do they get different exams throughout the year? And we've discovered, that violates our own policy. So probably not. Tutoring, this class, if you need tutoring, is a little tough because we use student tutors. Most people take this class as a senior. That said, there are services available over in the CATS building, including the Writing Center, that might be beneficial to you. If you have some form of a disability, you can certainly speak with our disabilities coordinator and work with them for accommodations, so including things like extended test time or assistance on some of the project or some other things. So, academic integrity, don't cheat. It's really hard in this one to cheat. Equal opportunity notice, I will equally pick on every one of you in here and make your lives miserable before the end of the semester. Right, James? He was like, yeah, that's great. So our tentative schedule. So in here is a course schedule. Now, if something really exciting in the world happens and we need to change this class, we certainly can. And so that's one of the, keep scrolling. One of the beauties of this is we have a little bit of freedom. So this kind of outlines our basic. We go all the way to chapter 14. Each week we have a discussion board. Each week has a quiz. Nothing new there. And then, but over here, you'll notice we vary and alternate assignments out of the book or alternative sources and part of your final project. And so we try to give you plenty of time to work on that final project piece. One of the difficulties with this, especially if you're a procrastinator, some of you are getting the guilty look right now, is you're working with a business or an organization and you're also having to adapt to their schedule. And so if you wait till Sunday night at midnight, XYZ Corporation that you're working with probably isn't going to be really willing to give you a lot of information at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. So you're going to have to be very proactive in that time management of your project. So I just want to point that out, scare those of you that procrastinate. So this is kind of that Carnegie model. And I'll probably also include in our ending surveys and some other things, we're really now just starting this. This is our first semester. We're putting these in our syllabi. And I'm going to probably poke a little bit on you guys to see if those numbers are accurate. Did you spend more time, less time? And probably do some investigating to see if we can better identify how many hours students work in a class. And the Carnegie model is set up that says a 3-hour class should have a minimum of 135 hours in that class, of you working in that class. And that includes time in classroom, but that doesn't necessarily mean for every class that you're going to have exactly that number of hours. We all know that people are very variable, classes are variable, content's variable, and so if you look back at a 100 level class, you probably didn't spend that much time, but then you take a 495 class, you're probably going to spend more than that time. So, but we're playing with that. That's a new thing we're looking at, and you're probably going to see that in some of your other syllabi this semester, and you'll probably get hammered from other courses and other ones about, is that time commitment appropriate and is it accurate? inside of Blackboard, one of the things I would love for you guys to all do, since we're a blended class, is I would like you guys to go into the discussion board and introduce yourself. And just tell us a little bit about yourself. Post a picture, not a mugshot if any of you had that happen over Christmas break. Post something, let us know so you guys can all, and some of you, you're going to find, hey, these names, I've seen some of these people before, and so we can have that little community, that cohort of people. We are not going to require you to work together in teams, so don't panic yet. But I do want you to work together in terms of assistance in this project, and you're going to see some discussion boards where we're going to throw out of, here's my project up to date, can everybody review it for me and see where I'm at and see those kinds of things. So I would like everybody to do that. And then if I look at assignments for week 1, so we're reading chapter 1 out of this textbook. It's usually good to start with 1, not 14. So make sure you do the introductions. And there is an assignment out of the end of the book. And this one, we're actually just doing review questions. So you're going to do the review questions. You're going to skip number 10 and 11 out of the book, and you're going to submit that. There is also a horrible, evil quiz-like substance. 20 multiple choice questions, 45 minutes to take. Other things that you need to take out of this chapter. So down here at the bottom is an RMO introduction video. And I would encourage you, it's 5 minutes. So that is one of the few things you can find in the MindTap Mind Connection that's actually salient to this book. Throughout the entire book is a running project. And this is actually an introduction to that project out of the book. So it would be really helpful to find time to watch that. We are going to go over a few topics of it today, and then we'll finish up on Wednesday. So, what is the idea of systems analysis? What is it where you're talking about? Why do I care? So, make sure you introduce yourself. Start thinking about what project interests you. Is there a group you would like to work with? And think of it this way. If you're thinking about this project, you can certainly look ahead in the book or in Blackboard. But think about, I am going to be a resource to this organization. I am going to come in and I am going to do a technology audit. I am going to audit their information systems, whether it's paper, whether it's electronic. So you're looking at systems, not just an individual item. And you're looking at what organization can I have some impact on. So if you come into me and you say, man, I work at Walmart and I'd really like to do it there. As a low-level Walmart employee, writing a paper for this class that's probably never going to get past the manager that you're working with, are you really going to have an impact? Probably not. On the other hand, if you go work with an organization, and I'll pick one at random, Project Response, which deals with domestic violence and such in Nemaha County, could you make an impact in that organization? Or maybe a small business that's starting up. Could you have an impact in that? Yes. So as you think about those, and you don't have to commit today or tomorrow or even the end of this week, but think about those kind of organizations, smaller in nature. So think 3 to 5 employees maybe. Think nonprofits. Think about what you have around you that you would like to assist. And that will probably be a great thing. So, a couple of other points. On-campus students, we tend to keep having jobs pop up in our computer services area for some of our students. So make sure you look at what is available at our own campus when you're looking at towards graduation. It might be a great job for you once you leave here, and we actually pay pretty decent. There are also some student jobs there that I've seen pop up. So keep an eye out even for around here what we're doing. Now obviously if you're taking this course from San Diego, it's probably not applicable, but I would certainly, if you're on campus, take a look at those. Make sure you have applied for graduation. If you have not, has anybody in here not applied for graduation? Go pay the $35 or whatever they have it priced. Is it $50 now? You've already spent $50,000 on your education. Spend the last $50. Apply for graduation. You probably can. Add it to your total that you owe. So make sure you've applied for graduation. That allows them to comb through your records for any things like, parking tickets hiding out there or other things. And sometimes we find some odd things that mean you have to take an additional course or there's a weird thing. One of the ones I am starting to see more is students who have transferred in. We have transferred in courses at the 300 and 400 level equivalent to them. They took it at JUCO, but they don't actually have enough 300, 400 level courses here because if they come out of a junior college, they stay at a under 200, under lower division courses. So we see some of those things starting to pop up and such. So make sure you've went through and applied, and if you have any questions, that advisor is usually a resource. So chapter 1. So I will confess that everywhere in this book where it says RMO, I am going to call that Rocky Mountain Outfitters. Because to me, that's what RMO should be, not Ridgeline Mountain Outfitters. So if you hear me say Rocky Mountain Outfitters, I really am referring to this same company. It's just my brain has twisted that around. So we're going to talk about the systems development life cycle, what an iterative development cycle is. We're going to introduce you to this RMO and why they are wanting to change things. We're going to look at what else is in the book, what kind of fun, wonderful things you're going to find in here. So after this chapter, after week 1, so you're going to understand what the 6 development processes, those core processes of that software development life cycle are. We're going to talk about Agile. And Agile just means you can move around because that's the trend in system development now. We're going to look at, based on that RMO, how those processes apply or how a company would do that. In this case, it's a completely fictional company, but I think it's interesting they chose a company that's marketing things like sports products. Have there been several sports product companies went belly up bankrupt in the last few years? Yeah, some very, very big ones that have went bankrupt. So it's kind of an interesting model. If those companies aren't willing to innovate and change, it's a lesson to what's going to happen to them. So this really is the key to the whole thing. Slide 1. Bullet point 1. You are looking at how I develop a system to solve a business need. Now, part of our organizational development here is we may have to try to figure out what that need is. If I just walk into a company, they may not realize, especially these very small organizations, they may not realize they even have a need. Well, I've been using the same way to do business since 1957. How are your sales compared to 1957? And you might find out there's some differences. They might find out there's ways they can make processes better. So I was actually in an insurance company this morning. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that Miss Perry and I both decided to wipe out vehicles over the Christmas break. But I'm in there and we just had a weird conversation because the insurance agent and I were talking about what they are doing actually in their business and changing. And they are going to an all-electronic version of these things that they used to get paperwork from whatever insurance company. They would mail it to them. They would then look at it and mail you your insurance cards for your vehicle. Does anybody have that model anymore? Well, they still were. They were still running that old school model. And so we talked about, oh, look at all the paperwork you're processing that you don't have to. In fact, most customers now either get their cards mailed directly from like Progressive or whoever the insurance company is. And in fact, in some cases, You may not even have a physical insurance card. Most states now allow you to pull up your insurance information on your cell phone. You don't even need to have that physical card. And so we talked a little bit about how that change and has driven from them having 4 and 5 people up front as clerical workers to really now they're just a few salesmen, and how those changes have occurred over the years and how they've managed to stay in business even though they're competing against all the online vendors and different things. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience. I didn't realize the insurance industry had changed that much. Now, had I not been there because I decided to run over a dryer at 80 miles an hour, apparently 6 o'clock in Mississippi is the time of the running of the dryers across the interstate. Or it's the time the moron in front of me did not have said dryer in his pile of other scrap tied down in his pickup truck. Interstate 55. Halfway between Jackson and Memphis, I ran into this. Yeah. So, Mississippi. So it was an interesting experience. So I will say this, I'm glad we had taken the larger vehicle and not one of the Priuses, because I think that would have come through the windshield and probably done some serious damage to me. It was also an eye-opening experience about 911, and the fact that they just kept hanging up on us was not a good sign. It was an interesting experience in all realms of the world. So we managed to make it back, but it is interesting that both of the CMIS instructors, we've wiped out our cars over the Christmas break, in fact, one day apart. So I don't know if you guys want to ride to any more conferences with us. There's always that fear of that. So, but it was an interesting experience. And so far, I'm not really sure what to do and how it's going to work. So a couple of things we need to talk about. So software. And this really is kind of where things have changed a lot. Where your world is changing. Because software is not really any longer just on a computer, is it? Where else do I find software? What has really changed your life with software? Half of you probably have them out looking at them on Facebook or Tinder or whatever app you're on. Your cell phone, because we become mobile now. So if I'm a company, I need to think about, is that mobile piece, is that something I need to get into a market of? Is it going to help me? And certainly there are people who have made a fortune out of this. So software runs not just on a computer, but we have to think about all the things that are computers around us. So cell phones. Is our car a computer? Yeah. What about the thermostat? Is it on a computer? Pretty much. Are they all over the place and they're going to take over your house? So what we want to think about is that continuum of all the way from an application. So let's pick on Tinder. Tinder's an app. You guys are all looking at me like, Tinder? I got an app there. I hope not. But for whatever reason, we have an app on our phone. That's a fairly small, lightweight device, right? Small in scope. Information systems, then in a business, we're talking about everything that touches data, whether it's paper, whether it's a computer system. So that's kind of the difference in that. So it's broad, includes manual processes. And do you think in 2019 at Peru State College we still have a lot of paper processes? Yeah. Now, we have some that you think aren't paper because, hey, it looks like it's a form on the web. And do you know what some of those forms actually do? They generate an email, which somebody prints out, which drives me crazy. But whatever reason. So, information system, big. Computer app, small. Think about it that way. So we're talking about, we're looking at this big macro view of the world and what's going on around us. And so we're looking at systems analysis is kind of the title, and we're really looking at what do we need to do to make that system work better. In a lot of companies, what does a systems analyst do? They're kind of the liaison. They work between, for example, the programmers and the users. They work as that business. So you're translating business needs into computer requirements that somebody can sit there and code. Now, in some cases, you may have every piece of that job, but in larger companies, you're kind of that liaison. So when you start looking at the idea of systems analysis, you really are combining business, that needs-based, and that computer processing. So what do we need to do? Is there a demand for this? Is there a demand for a systems analyst job? Can they make pretty good money? In some cases. There are some that get labeled as systems analysts and they don't make a whole lot. But when I look online, so what's some of the bigger employers around here? So if we pick Peru, what's one of the bigger employers around here? Great, you guys guessed where I was going. Does Cooper or Nebraska Public Power, are they hiring systems analysts almost all the time? If you look on their website, they are almost always hiring systems analysts. Junior system analysts at Cooper usually look at they're starting about $75,000 to $85,000 a year. Seniors are making $135,000 on up. I am throwing out his salary. As I say that, why am I working? No, because I love you guys. No. So you need to think about that systems analysis. Now, does that mean that every job is going to pay that much? If you go to work at Peru, are we going to pay that much? No. If you go to work at a small business, are you going to make that much? Probably not. But can you have a good career out of it? Yeah. So, systems design. So now you're taking this information and you're defining and describing and refining, analyzing, modeling. You're doing that idea of a system design. So you're taking those system requirements and you're taking those business requirements and you're putting them together. And we're trying to figure out how we can do that. So, systems analysis, what is required? Systems design is the how. How do I make that happen? And sometimes we run into issues that there isn't really a technology solution yet. But we know that we can design a model for how that would happen at some point. So let's go back to Tender. What is required? Does Tender have requirements? You guys just look so uncomfortable when I mention Tender that I like using it as a reference point. So has Tender made money? There are over 800 right swipes on Tender every minute in the United States. That just creeped me out a little bit. So, are there requirements? Do we know that they're going to have things that they're going to have happen? Of ads, I believe. I say this, and I have never actually, I have no clue about the Tender app. I just use it as a way to introduce things that make you guys think and start to look uncomfortable. And in fact, some of you are blushing, which tells me you must have a profile on there or something. Just, it's, I don't know. What I do know is it's got requirements. It's got a little plane. Great. So we know the what's. We know that they're going to gather information about you and try to make a match based on some criteria, right? So let's say we're going to design a new program similar to Tender. But the market for 18 to 75-year-olds is already taken by Tender. So we want to market to middle schoolers. Middle schoolers need to be able to date, right? No? So let's just say it's a bad idea and we acknowledge that. Are we going to have requirements of what they're going to need? So parent disclaimer would be top of the list, right? So clearly we're not going to build one like that. But we know on the back end We're gonna figure out that design. What are our business needs? So as part of our business need, are we going to have to find advertisers that are willing to pay for us? Yeah, imagine being that salesman. Hey, I'm marketing a Tinder-like app to middle school students. Would you like to advertise? Yeah. So, Liam, I'm getting more and more scared every time. So, we know that there's all those requirements. What is required? But now our work, that systems design, how are we going to design the database behind there? How are we going to design the web interface? How are we going to design that app to run on an iPhone? And some of these things cost a lot of money to develop. So some of you may have heard of Dave Ramsey. Have any of you guys heard of Dave Ramsey in here? Dave Ramsey's company developed an app that you can put on your phone for budgeting. They developed it first. I think it's now available for Android, but at first it was available only for Apple. And before they got to the development stage where it was actually pushed out and even at a beta test, they had spent $1 million in development for that app. So they've went through that what's required, they went through that how, and they went through a few other steps. But we have to come up with those ideas, and we have to model that in between. If you would have at first come into somebody and said, you know, this is a great idea you have, but it's going to cost $1 million to develop it, what do you think is going to happen with most companies? Are they going to go, holy cow, we're not going to do that? So we're going to put in all those pieces that might justify why that would be a great idea. Imagine Facebook. So you guys have all grown up with Facebook for the most part. No.